Good afternoon. We're here, Source Fashion, day one. I'm here with Lindsay McKerchar from Finesse Clothing. Thanks for being here. Could you give us a very quick intro to who you are? How did you get to where you are today?
Yes, so I am, I always say I'm a garment tech by trade, but I started in the industry as a garment tech, and then over the years took on ethical trade, sourcing, and then more recently in the last sort of 10 years, sustainability. And have worked on a lot of sustainability initiatives around carbon, water waste, reducing consumption. And I was approached, going on a year ago now, by a startup called Finesse US. They were founded by a computer scientist who he lives in a tech world. He runs the business like a tech business, not necessarily a fashion business. So a lot of the legacy processes that I would have been used to, we don't necessarily follow. But I run the supply chain. So I look after sourcing, I look after production, I look after technical, because obviously that's my background. And of course, ethical trade and sustainability are just part of the table stakes. But we're all about innovating, driving a different way of doing things, using AI as a lever to do that.
Okay, so you've had quite a privileged position of working at companies where I imagine they've not been as tech savvy, and now working somewhere where that is obviously at the heart of it. A lot of our audience, I mean, everyone in the industry, everyone in various industries is talking about AI and how we can use it in a practical way. If you were one of those businesses that maybe don't have the tools or the systems already built in to kind of allow them to innovate, what kind of advice would you give, and where can they start?
I guess, so someone actually just approached me after the talk and asked me a very similar question. They came from a garment tech background. I think we sometimes try to overcomplicate things a little bit, and we're looking for something that's going to change our world. I think we just need to try and test and be okay failing and tripping ourselves up. I think for each area, from a design perspective, just go in and start using it and use it to enhance your existing ideas. You know, use one of the existing platforms. I mentioned Midjourney earlier. That's one that I've used in a past life. But go in and start playing around with the tools and work out what it can give you. And on technical, you know, one of the girls that approached me asked me, where would you start? What tool would you use? And we want to use a PLM. And I was like, you don't have to go straight to PLM. There are other things. Think about, how many times are you repeating your process on these areas? Can you bring in Close 3D, or can you bring in a 3D virtual fitting tool? Talk to your factories. Have they already got these 3D fitting tools? Can you just lean out your process first? So think about how you would manually lean out your process, and then work out how you can bring in AI or something, a tool to support your thinking in your existing process. Then start thinking about how you change what you do, because one of the hardest things to do is move the ship whilst it's sailing. It's really hard to get buy-in to do that. So start testing and learning, and then you can do a really quick proof of concept, do a project. And I guess it depends where you sit in, the hierarchy, if you like, of the company, as to how much influence you'll have. I think sometimes if you just test and learn and do and can show progress, you're going to get people going, oh, how did you do that so quickly? Well, just start small and then build up. Yeah,
I think it can be very overwhelming for a lot of people who come to the show. Especially AI is such a nebulous, all-encompassing word. That I think people don't know that, you just kind of have to do before you start thinking and kind of get yourself overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I wanted to dig into a little bit about Finesse a bit more. So obviously, AI can be used in the design, it can be used operationally, it can be used on the consumer side of things. Could you go into a little bit more detail about how you guys use AI?
Yes and no.
Okay.
We have a proprietary algorithm we use that scrapes data, multiple data points. And what that does is it gives us some really informed live information about what our customers want. And what that is doing is that's pointing us in the direction of what product they want, but it's also telling us how much of it we should buy. And I think that is the big thing. That is the sort of founding principle of the brand is about how do we approach overconsumption.
Yeah.
You know, I use the analogy of, you know, well, we sold 10,000 puffers last year. I think we can probably sell another 10 and it's on trend, so let's whack another 5 on there. You know, it's obviously more sophisticated than that, but I think, you know, we're not doing that. We're saying, well, the customer's signposting us, and these are the markers, these are the data points, and they're actually telling us now. We're not using last year's data, we're using live current data to understand what they want today and what they want now. And then, you know, we're cutting out a chunk of the development process. So because they've told us they want it, we then go to the supplier, the factory, with that tech pack, and then the development process starts. Now, we're only seeing 2 samples. I haven't had to sign anything off. We haven't had to go through pre-sign-offs. We haven't had to get it in front of a whole management team. We've cut that whole part of the process out. So you're already talking 2 months in some cases. And so we're giving the customer what they want now in real time, without all of that process, because we trust the data. Yeah. And I think I mentioned trust the data probably one too many times on the stage, but trust the data really is important. If the customer's telling us they want it, they want it. But they only want it for a period of time. And, you know, we'll place 100 units. And if they still want it, we might place another 100 units. But we will do a bit of a test and repeat, and that benefits the factories. But what that has done is actually, that has created some styles that we've had in our portfolio for, you know, since we've begun 4 years ago. So we have, you know, one blazer, it's, you know, a core piece in our range. We have a pant that is a core piece in our range. They come back for, maybe we might redo a new print on the pant, and they'll come back for that. But it's a real staple, and it's driving staple products in our range that we are going back for, and we are driving efficiency, but we're not cutting 5,000 and sitting on a mountain of inventory and hoping that it sells, and then having to mark it down, and it's a race to the bottom, and all the other problems that come with the sort of legacy trading model.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the data there, then why not use it, and why not be more efficient, which it sounds like you guys are doing. I'm really interested in what the workplace looks like at Finesse, because having someone who's more with a tech background must influence the culture, as opposed to someone who has a more fashion background. What does it look like working at Finesse?
I think a lot of people assume that it's, you know, headphones on, head down. But it's really creative, and we've got some really creative individuals that are building things using AI in a way that, you know, pen to paper that, you know, can also do, and it drives the same excitement and interest. I think the main difference for me is that it's faster. So you're making decisions a lot faster. And I think the big difference there is startup culture. It's a startup headspace. You have to move quickly. But I think what is different about the tech industry is, and I mentioned this also, is that kind of just do it mentality. You know, we're not sitting there for months on end trying to build a proof of concept. We're coming to the table with an idea. We're working out if it fits our model, our consumer, our customer base, and then we'll do it. We might A/B test it, but we'll do it, and we'll make it happen. And, you know, we have a full team of engineers, and they are really instrumental in making a lot of this stuff happen in the background. And they definitely influence how we operate as well. I think we still have the traditional, you know, we've got designers, they're still designing, building tech packs, doing beautiful sketches. They're still applying personality. There is still that element. The two worlds are just meeting, and we're just changing the way that we think. And instead of sitting on an idea and then waiting and getting a sample, and we're just creating and making and doing, and that is the big difference. Yeah,
it feels like a really nice merge of worlds.
That's exactly
actually, it feels like they really complement each other.
That's exactly it.
What I mean, I guess kind of elaborating on the fact that you do still obviously need that human touch. Is there anything that you feel like could never be touched by AI in the fashion industry? Do you think that things that have to foundationally stay?
I mean, the physical human making of the garment at the moment, but who knows? I mean, I remember sort of 15 years ago when 3D printing came in, you know, that was the big fear factor, was, 3D printing is going to take over our world. That hasn't happened in the apparel industry just yet. But I think, you know, the actual physical manufacturing of the garment, I think the artisanal craft, there's still a lot of artisanal craft in our world, whether it's, you consider pattern cutting an artisanal craft, embellishment, beading, crochet, all of that stuff is still artisanal, and it is still a craft that we rely on. I don't see that going away, and actually I think that's a really lovely blend of AI and craftsmanship, and we should celebrate that, and we need to bring that to life, and we can use AI to bring that to life, and we should use AI to remove the inefficiency from maybe it's the decision making, and we certainly have done that at the front end of our process, but remove some of the inefficiency so that we can focus on the artisanal craftsmanship and allowing for the time for that craft to be nurtured.
Yeah, I think fashion's a really lovely way to show how AI and human can complement each other. I think at the beginning everyone was like, oh my God, humans are going to be obsolete. And I mean, there was all this fear mongering, but I think fashion as an industry is a really lovely way to show how human creativity can work with the data points and actually create something more sustainable. Yeah,
I mean, and there were some business leaders back in the 90s that said, when ASOS was founded, this e-com only platforming is not going to work. Bricks and mortar is where it's at, bricks and mortar with a little peppering of e-com. And unfortunately, those businesses have gone. Yeah. And, e-com is thriving, and okay, it's had its challenges, but it's still alive, very much alive. And for some businesses, it's a 50-50 split between bricks and mortar and e-tailing.
Does Finesse have a actual store? No, okay.
We don't.
It's all online
at the moment.
Okay, is that a plan?
Maybe in the future, yeah.
Okay, is it top secret?
No, not at all. We're just not there yet.
Okay,
we're very much in the digital space.
Okay, and you operate globally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
The US is our biggest market, but yes, we operate globally.
Okay,
and we have customers in Australia, UK.
Okay, nice.
The UAE, but predominantly the US.
Great. Well, I always like to finish these a little bit forward-looking. What are you most optimistic about over the next 3 years, let's say, whether it's personal or career-wise? What are you most excited about?
I mean, I just think this is a really exciting time to be in a business that is innovating and moving forward and not afraid to take leaps. And I think that for me personally, that that's why I moved to Finesse, was to learn and to grow and to understand how this business moves at a different pace. And so I think it would be really interesting for the UK, for Europe to see how the startup culture evolves, because that's one of the big things I think we're lacking is funding in the startup space. So with there being so many challenges in the US, I think it'll be interesting to see, we're VC backed, it'll be interesting to see how the VC community approach European businesses. I think it would be great to see an injection of startup life in our world, because again, we have very little startup energy in fashion in particular. And I think that changes the dynamic as well a little bit. So I think being in a space that is innovating and moving forward and growing and learning every day is super exciting for me.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being part of Source Fashion.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome to this very special on-site edition of Honest Not Perfect, our podcast. I'm here on site at Source Fashion. I'm talking to some of the speakers from the catwalk, and I'm here with Miranda Beckett.
Hi.
So she is the project manager for fashion initiative at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, I believe.
Yes.
If you don't mind, could you give us just a little bit of an intro about who you are, how have you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm the fashion project manager at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and our mission is to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. My background isn't actually in fashion. My background is in consulting and business change and transformation. Had a bit of a career pivot and moved into sustainability and transformation, and ended up at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation learning a lot about fashion.
Yeah.
And so I've been there for about 3 years now, working primarily on how to scale up circular business models like rental, repair, resale, and remaking.
Okay, amazing. So I think the idea of circular economy, circularity, it's not new, obviously, but I guess from my perspective, it feels like the progress is a little bit uneven and unsteady. I don't know if that's fair, but yeah, I don't know what you think about that. But I also, a follow-up question to that would be, why do you think that is, and what do you think the biggest gap is at the moment in actually making it happen?
Yeah, I think, circular economy has been a bit of a buzzword and has been spoken about in fashion for the last 10 years or so. And businesses have been, creating circular economy roadmaps, redesigning their products, setting targets and ambitions. but they've been going it alone. And there's only so far businesses can go alone. And there's some sort of systemic barriers which no business can tackle by themselves. Primarily they're around scaling up circular materials and bio-based materials. We're seeing quite a few hurdles with that. So things like challenges regenerating the land, limited demand, and it makes it really difficult to scale. Also, circular business models are really complicated. The reverse logistics, the sorting, collection, and then also the supplying of the stock. And without collective action, it's really tricky. And then finally, there's recycling and scaling up recycling infrastructure. So we don't have the incentives or the capacity for it at the moment. So without joint attention and focus and advocacy and action on those things, the circular economy will stall a bit.
Oh, that was a really wonderful answer. There's a lot of sound bites we can get from that. I wanted to pick into a couple of things, because this idea that circular businesses can't scale, I think that there's obviously some very real commercial pressures that everyone's facing. It sometimes feels like the two are in competition, that you can either do one or the other. And I think it's the wrong way to look at it. But I guess the criticism of circular business models is often that, it can't scale. And I guess I wanted to dig into that. How realistic is that? How real is that?
I mean, they can definitely scale. It's just, they can be a little bit more complicated. But if you look at where customers are shopping, they're shopping in the circular economy. There was a quarter last year where Vinted was the largest clothes retailer in France. So businesses are going to have to start playing in the circular economy more if they want to remain relevant. I think a lot of the time they set it up as pilots and it's not really designed to scale. And that is where some of the hurdles are. So you have to really focus on it as a revenue generating opportunity and build it in collaboration with the rest of the business, rather than just keeping it as a sustainability team activity.
I think a lot of, again, this is a generalization, but I feel like sometimes some aspects of sustainability just seem like a compliance task. And it feels like you need to just approach it in a completely different way. A lot of our audience and a lot of our attendees, they are working within certain limitations that the business puts on them. So, they've not started with circular principles right at the design. So what kind of advice would you give to someone who is within those limits and trying to install more circular design principles? Is there somewhere that they can start? I know it's a really huge mammoth task, but what would you suggest? What kind of advice would you give to someone like that?
I mean, I think there's three sort of principles that you can think of when thinking about circular design. It's designing for products to be used more. So designing for durability, for emotional durability as well, so that they're made to be made again. So thinking about not just how they're put together, but also how they're disassembled. Trims and zips get cut off during recycling. So trying to minimize those bits which are not easily disassembled. And then also getting ahead of regulation and making clothes from safe and renewable or recycled inputs, and keeping abreast of any changes in policy that are happening, so you can be ahead of the curve rather than it suddenly coming and you having to scramble.
So regulation can be a bit of a sticky topic. I know that there's a lot of European countries that are incentivizing brands and retailers to work in a more circular and sustainable way. Are there any areas that you'd like to see us implementing over here, or that we can learn from?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the EU, there's EPR in situ in countries, and you look at countries like France, which have the sort of repair incentives as part of that, which is really exciting to see. There's also ESPR and thinking about the design of products. But then you can also be there's also upcoming legislation on the Circular Economy Act and things like VAT within that. So it's all progressing, but there's still a lot of details to be worked out in a lot of these policies. And I think their success will be in that detail.
A lot of the people that I speak to, they're like, what is going on? I just want to know. And I'm like, I don't have the answer. But it would be interesting to see how this year plays out. So on the panel that you're going to be on later, actually, so you're sitting alongside some really interesting brands. I think it's Vivo and Vin Shoes, who are at their heart really trying to be a bit more circular. And how can we make circular more profitable? That's the kind of the the crux of the panel. Are there any other brands that you are either you're shopping at or you think that people should kind of have a look at as good examples of how they're really doing that circular design really well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first is just wear the clothes you have.
Yeah.
And also shopping secondhand in charity shops, on peer-to-peer platforms, through any businesses that have set up the circular business models. Also thinking about rental. I now, if I have to dress up for an event, I will never buy another dress for a wedding. I will always rent it from a platform. But then there's really interesting work happening in design across a really big range of different types of businesses. Yes, there's the sort of like there's Vin and Vivo who are really focused on it, but there's also really promising activity in a lot of the larger high street brands who have really transformed their circular design guidelines. For example, Primark has got a really strong set of circular design guidelines, and I think general public might not know about that, as well as H&M and others. So it's looking at more than just the name of the brand. It's thinking about what are those products that I'm buying. Are they durable? Will I wear them in over a year's time? Will I wear it more than 3 times?
Yeah, it's lots of different ways. It's not just the onus isn't just on the brand. It's also your own kind of purchasing power and your buying behavior that obviously I think will kind of help the whole system run. I guess so. Well, we'll see what happens. I want to just end on a little bit of optimism. We're at start 2026. What are you most excited about that's coming up this year, whether it's, affecting your kind of day-to-day job or just about the industry as a whole?
I'm really excited about the project I'm working on with the fashion remodel. We're working on policy at the moment and have soon got coming out a unified business statement on some of the policies that could help circular business models to scale.
Amazing.
So we're really looking forward to that being published. That which will happen in sort of spring this year. And there's also lots of other exciting work happening across the industry. I'm seeing lots more collaboration happening, which is really important rather than just businesses going it alone. And I think it's really the sort of age of actually implementation rather than theory. So I'm excited by 2026.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for being part of Source Fashion.
Thank you so much. Excited.
Hello and welcome back. I'm here on site for a special edition of our podcast, Honest Not Perfect. I'm talking to a lot of the speakers from the catwalk. I'm here with Rosie Cripps. Hello. Rosie is the head of Revivo and circularity at Vivo Barefoot. Do you mind giving us a brief intro into your background, who you are, and how have you got here today?
Sure. I started in the industry, I would say, 20 years now. I've been in the fashion and retail sector. I started off as a trainee buyer, so I started off at a very kind of junior level, doing a lot of administration. I then moved up through the stages within Next. I then sort of slightly went into a different direction and went and worked on the sourcing side. So I went and I actually lived in Bangladesh and was in the factories every day, looking at the production, the development, and really working at the other end of it and seeing how things work. I think it was really, really good to get that sort of end-to-end perspective. I then sort of stayed within sourcing and have now worked for Vivo Barefoot for over 6 years. I started out in the sourcing and production side, but then I still have always had a really, really keen eye on sort of sustainability and circularity and a lot about the value chain and the people within our production sector. So I started looking after the Revivo side, which is the re-commerce side, so the repair and resale of our Vivo Barefoot shoes. Also working on circularity and looking at end of life, how we can get the most of our product.
Yeah. You've got a really unique skill set, I imagine, and a unique view of the industry, which I think probably puts you in really good stead to be managing the whole circularity initiative at Vivo. I mean, how has that influenced how you're approaching stuff at Vivo Barefoot?
I mean, what I have found very useful is that I'm very used to working from end to end, so from the designer's side, so working closely with the designers actually, which is really important within the circularity side of actually how can we design to make sure that we're able to repair, or design for durability, or design product to make sure that it's not just aesthetics, it's really, really, we're thinking about that. And luckily within Vivo Barefoot, that's a really important part of our business anyway.
Yeah.
So actually it's not hugely, aesthetic driven, but it needs that element, otherwise you wouldn't get customers buying it. But then also to the other end of it, and I think circularity and repair and everything within our industry, the value chain is important, and you'll hear a lot of companies not calling it supply chain anymore, calling it a value chain, because it's about adding value. And that's the other part of, I think, that sustainability that's starting to grow, but is still quite small. And actually the people within the business are really important. And when I used to work every day in the factories in Bangladesh, getting to know the people and the people who are actually making your product is really important.
It's such an incredible advantage that you have, because I know that when I've spoken to other senior leaders from a lot of big retailers and a lot of big institutions, I think they struggle sometimes with the fact that a lot of their staff, they don't actually have that core understanding, or they're not as close to it. And I think it's very easy when you aren't close to something like that to forget about it. Naturally, it's human nature. So it's really cool that you've been able to see that, and then that's now obviously influencing your role at Vivo. So with Vivo Barefoot, I just wanted to ask, so the kind of at its genesis, was it always kind of thinking about circularity? How new is Revivo as part of that? And
Revivo's about 5 years old. It did start very small, and actually we started a lot, especially in the footwear side, a lot before a lot of other companies and other brands were doing a lot of the repair and resale. The setting up of it was it takes a lot of time. When you think of a pair of shoes compared to a t-shirt, so the repair on that is, we've got often over 30 components in our shoes, and resoling is really important. It's the thing that people want to do. I suppose the advantage we have got on the resale and the repair platform is actually footwear, I think, does have a certain emotional connection, which I think is important for we do two sides of it. So we repair product maybe that customers have returned and we resell that, but we also repair product for customers who want to keep their own product and repair it. And I think that's quite important, and having that emotional connection to the product is really important.
And showing that you're a business that cares about that.
Exactly.
I know people who have your guys' shoes, and they're so bought into the messaging. It's so incredible, really, because they really care, and they really want to talk about how amazing it is, and it's like they're doing your marketing for you. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And I think that there is that kind of, we're really pushing, and actually what we're trying to do as well is we're very clear to our customers. We want them to wear those shoes as much as possible. We don't want it to be a throwaway culture. We want them to wear and wear and wear and wear until they don't wear anymore. And some people do. I mean, some of the product I see that come back for a repair, honestly, holes in them, stitched up with or taped up and everything. And people just absolutely love their product. And I think that's really important.
I really feel like that you guys, you do really well at the messaging and building that kind of brand loyalty. Are there any other examples of other companies that you also are kind of like that you admire or respect, that you think are doing similarly, that you think are kind of at the same level as you guys?
We are sort of, I speak to a lot of different brands and companies. We work, actually one of our repair partners who are based in Leeds, the boot repair company, they work with other brands too. They work with the likes of Birkenstock and Dr. Martens, and they are really, they're also pushing forward on this repair side. You look at the likes of Aja, who have got little repair shops in their stores, and our store is next door to Finisterre, and what they do, and Patagonia, they do a really, they do their repairs like a badge of honor. Like you can see it's repaired, it's visibly mended, and people really, really, I think people feel connected to that sort of repair.
I think I don't know what the answer is, but I think you can kind of tell as a consumer which businesses they're really valuing it, and it's authentic. I don't know what your opinion is on that, on like how are some brands able to kind of really communicate in an authentic way with the consumer, and how are others just not like getting it right?
It's a really interesting one, and it's not saying that some lots of brands are bad and lots of brands are good. I've worked with a few different sort of larger scale retailers who sell a lot more product than we do, but I think it really is that actually if you are able to sell product very, very low prices. I think it doesn't matter what, what you do on the other end on the sustainability angle and that sort of stuff. Actually, the mindset is very different, and I think for us, it really is about mindset. And I think maybe we're lucky because actually people, I think that the sort of the barefoot and the wide and the flexible and the sort of foot health comes slightly hand in hand with the sustainability side. So it's less of a push, but also there is still that really important side that we're getting people to understand that.
Yeah. So circularity has always been something that's been part of Vivo Barefoot, right? So a lot of our audience and a lot of the people that attend our show, they don't necessarily work at an institution that also has at its core. Is there any pieces of advice that you could give to someone who does work in a certain business where they're trying to start instilling a little bit more of circular design principles? What would you suggest for someone like that?
I think it doesn't have to be big steps, it's small steps, and actually just being open and honest with the business but also the customer where you are. We each year publish a report which says, we shine a light on ourselves and say, this is where we are, this is what we're not doing. Actually we need to be doing more, and I think that is really important, and looking at, okay, what could we be doing and what are we not doing, and not sort of pretending and sort of sugarcoating things that you're doing or not doing. I think really starting at the beginning, understanding the end to end of a business, as we were talking about before, knowing where things go, knowing about the value chain, knowing all those sort of stuff, I think is really important. But also there's something we were talking about on the panel today was the collaboration, working with other brands, talking to other people. I think it's, when I first started in the industry, everything was so closed and everything was very insular, whereas now actually I think you can talk to other people and understand what they're doing and see if you can then start instilling that in your companies.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think it's really encouraging to hear that people are collaborating more. I think it's potentially traditionally an industry that doesn't talk to each other, so it's quite nice that's happening, and you're seeing that happening in your...
Absolutely. And also I think what's the other interesting thing is people, the younger people within the businesses, they're really fighting for it, but also what new technology and how we can get all this kind of new information to help us and support us as well. I think that there's a lot of things going on that can really help us in how we look at the industry and look at our businesses.
You mentioned that you try and keep yourselves accountable and think, what more can we do? Are you able to share with us, in this spirit of honesty, in a way of ways in which maybe you tried things out that didn't quite go to plan, or any kind of major challenges that you guys faced?
We're always facing challenges. We have a scoring system that we do for our products. So even from design stage all the way through manufacturing, we score it for how repairable it is. We score it for how many materials there are, how easily recyclable or downcyclable or things like that. And we give it a score, and we hold ourselves to account for that. And to be honest, we always set targets, and we very rarely reach those targets, but actually it's about doing it. And I'd rather not reach those targets, but really dig into what you're doing, than actually go, yep, okay, fine, and find ways of being able to reach those targets when actually it's not really happening. And talking about that, actually, a lot of companies talk about circularity. A lot of companies talk about regenerative businesses, but actually, are we even sustainable in some ways?
Yeah, it sounds like you're making the intangible tangible. So then, even if you're not hitting the targets, you're moving a bit closer, and so that sounds like a good way to go.
Exactly, really. And everything. We have to be a company that is profitable to be able to continue. Course, so actually, there are some difficult discussions, and there are some fights we get in, because actually sometimes you do have to think, okay, what's best longer term, and there are some things where we have to kind of step back, but make agreements going forward and for the future, because actually, yes, we could do everything we can in certain ways and make it the most sustainable or circular product ever, but actually, if it means that we can't sell it, or it means that we're losing money, our business doesn't survive. So.
Of course, there's very real commercial pressures that you obviously have to think about.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask a question for my own curiosity, really. I think that resale, the idea of resale being built into most brands, it just seems like a bit of a no-brainer for me. And I guess my question is, what stops people from doing that, or what are the major kind of challenges in actually doing? Obviously, it's a big deal. I'm kind of belittling it in a little way, but like I feel like to me, it seems like there's something that everyone should be doing. But what are the kind of the key difficulties in actually getting that started?
Well, it's first of all looking where you can find that product. So we do within Vivo, we do 100-day trials. So someone can wear something for 100 days, and if they don't feel like they like it, then they can send it back. So then one of the reasons Vivo started was because we were having product that we couldn't just then put back on shelves and sell again. You know, returns do happen, especially in footwear, especially in our footwear, which is quite different. So that was one of the reasons why we started the resale model. So actually, where are the buckets of product coming back to? How can we do that? Working with a wider team, the logistics in and around resale is huge. You know, actually working with third parties that do a lot of that stuff as a start is really, really great, and getting that product back. Also, talking to your customer and actually getting that product back. Some customers, you know, obviously with resale platforms, with Vinted, with eBay, all those sort of things, you know, people want to do it themselves, but also how can you incentivize a customer to get that product back so we can resell it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to consider, obviously. Well, I guess I just wanted to end on an optimistic note. We're at the beginning of the year. What are you most looking forward to over the next 12 months?
We've just kicked off our autumn-winter 27 product. So we're starting to look at autumn-winter 27. So we're always looking ahead, but then we're always looking behind. And what I feel like is that the meeting we had yesterday was really collaborative between all of the different teams and really looking at a way forward. And you know, I'm sat in the room with all these people who are talking about new product, but actually, you know, they still looking at me with a lens of, okay, say from a circularity point of view, from a repair and recycle point of view, you know, is this okay? So actually having that in the mindset is really, really, really exciting, because it takes, as I say, all the way from the beginning and the design process all the way to the end and the production to make sure it works.
And it probably helps that everyone's kind of on the same page. They're all bought in.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Rosie. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the show. And we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.